nothing what I'm used to. And I kind of grew up along the lines of a city boy. I wasn't too exposed to nature or camping or any of that really fun stuff until somewhere along the line I became really fascinated with learning about the planet. And so naturally I turned to the study of geology, which is the study of Earth and its processes. Soon after this epiphany that I had, I bought a plane ticket to Northern California, and I attended school at Humboldt State University, which is where I actually got my degree in geology. And it was when I moved to Humboldt was when I really was able to dive into this passion of mine of learning about this really beautiful and dynamic planet on which we live on. And so somehow I landed up here, and this is a really, really awesome place to study geology. I think my favorite part is watching visitors' reactions when they first come out to the rim. It's always one that kind of leaves us with feelings of awe and amazement, right? Stirs up these emotions. What are some things that you guys have felt the first time you came out here? Just shout them out.
Wow!
Wow! Okay, what else? Nothing else, just wow. That's the only emotion we felt.
That's the biggest word.
How did that happen? That's a great one. So I think,
Who are those little stone people?
who are these people? How did they get there? So I think we're really amazed at what we're looking at, but we're also really confused. So it's this part of this brain, part of our brain that's activated, the one that seeks to understand what we're confused by, right? And so if you're one of these people that are really astounded but also really confused at views like these, you have come to the right talk. The main message that I want to send to you guys today is that views at Bryce Canyon are ones which both challenge and capture our imaginations. They force us to imagine a planet nothing like it is today. And so I will be teaching you how to get Bryce Canyon, how to form Bryce Canyon, and you need to follow these 3 steps. If anyone ever asks you, how do you form Bryce Canyon, you can tell them these 3 things, and you will mostly be correct. They are a giant lake filled with dead critters to create the colorful rocks that we see. You need the interaction of huge slabs of earth which crash into one another and cause the land to uplift and crack and break apart. And finally, you have the power of rain and water and ice to form and sculpt the hoodoos. So let's start with the first item on the list, which calls for a giant lake filled with dead critters. Here I have a map. My fingers are pointing to it. A map of what Utah used to look like a very, very, very long time ago. And the red star that you see indicates where Bryce Canyon was approximately located. Does anyone see anything peculiar about this? Maybe a body of water that doesn't exist there anymore. There's a body of water there that doesn't exist there anymore, right? And so this is important because this is the beginning stages of the formation of Bryce Canyon, a giant lake. And I really want to emphasize how big this lake was. For one, it would fill up this entire amphitheater with lake water. If you drove here from Cedar City, you would have driven through lake water. If you came here from Salt Lake City, you would have been driving through water. And so this was a truly extensive lake. And despite its large size, it was only about 15 feet deep. So it was very extensive, but it was very shallow. And within this lake, we have the presence of tiny critters. These are microscopic organisms, and they have a very hard shell. So as these critters live inside this lake, upon their death, their bodies would trickle down to the bottom of the lake floor and create a very thin layer. This might seem insignificant or perhaps minuscule, but if you repeat this process a few thousand times, a few million times, a few billion times, you start to see that the remains of these dead critters build up and up and up as they die. Eventually you get huge cliffs of this dead critter material, hundreds of feet in height, thousands of pounds in weight, and it begins to squish and squeeze and compress these layers until they interlock with one another, cement together, and create coherent rock. The only 2 rocks that I want you guys to remember: limestone and dolostone. These are the 2 most important rocks I want you to remember. And the only things I want you to remember about each of these rocks is that limestone easily dissolves and dolostone does not easily dissolve. And you'll see why this is very important when we get to the third and final part of the story. But for now, just remember, limestone, easily dissolvable; dolostone, not easily dissolvable. Let's pass these rocks around, put a name to each one. So you might be wondering about the colors that you see here as well. Well, these dead critter rocks were filled with the abundance of the element iron. I know you guys are all on vacation here, so I won't get too chemistry involved with you, but who here can tell me what chemical reaction occurs when the element iron interacts with the element oxygen?
Oxidation.
Rust. Oxidation, rust. We see this on our cars maybe, or our pots and pans. It's the same exact thing that's happening here. So where do we find oxygen?
In the air.
In the air, that's the most obvious one. Where else?
Water.
Water, exactly. So these rocks, which were formed in a lake, by the way, are interacting with oxygen all in the air, in the lake water, and thus it is staining it these really brilliant colors of oranges and reds, which you see before you. And this is really important to think about, the fact that these are dead critter rocks and the iron and all that, because unless you did reading before you came here, I doubt the first thing that you think about when you look out at views like these is a huge lake filled with these dead critters to create rocks. Thus it really challenges our imagination and forces us to imagine this landscape which is nothing like it is today. But so far all I've described to you is a huge cliff, alternating layers of what are the two rocks again?
Those
And what's significant about them?
ones.
Yes, very good. So that's all I've described so far is a huge, huge cliff of limestone, dolostone. But I didn't tell you how you get these hoodoos yet, right?
Right.
And so we need to move on to the second part of the story to progress and see how we get the hoodoos, which calls for the interaction of huge pieces of earth which crash into one another. Have you guys heard of plate tectonics before? It is one of the coolest things you could ever learn about, ever. So the idea is that the entire surface of the planet are made up of these huge, huge slabs of earth. I like to think of them as jigsaw puzzle pieces. No matter where you go, land or ocean, you are over a plate tectonic. And to really emphasize the scale of these things, continents sit on top of plate tectonics. These are truly, truly massive slabs of earth. And so right here on this red plate, that is where we are standing, the continent of North America sits on top of the North American plate. These are really, really massive slabs of earth. And the really cool thing is that these big slabs of earth don't just sit in one place. They actually move around one another. They interact with one another. You can imagine this by taking this big puzzle piece, this big puzzle, and squishing it and squeezing it in every possible direction. You'll see that some of the slabs of earth will crash into one another, some will move past each other, and some will move away from each other. And it's this interaction of these huge slabs of earth which create some of our most beautiful landscapes that we see on earth. It creates our volcanoes, our mountains, our deserts. Pretty much any landscape you could think of on earth owes its thanks to these huge slabs of earth which move around. Now you might be wondering, which plate tectonics are responsible for this? As you can see, I've created these very intricate props. We have what was called the Farallon plate, which will be on my right arm, and the North American plate, which will be on my left arm. Remember, these are bigger than continents. Continents sit on top of these. So where's Bryce Canyon?
On the North American.
On top of the North American plate, right? So we'll say it's about where my watch is. That's where Bryce Canyon is. And if you recall, sometimes these huge slabs of earth do crash into one another. That's exactly what happened here. As Farallon in North America came into head-on collision, Farallon, being the denser of the two plates, was forced underneath North America, continuing to move underground just like a train would. When we have this process of these slabs of earth smashing into one another, and one is forced underneath the other, we call this subduction. So Farallon is subducting beneath North America. As this happens, it's kind of hitting the ceiling of North America. It's causing it to buckle upwards, upwards and upwards and upwards, moving thousands and thousands of feet into the air. The really significant thing, the thing that really challenges our imagination, is that these rocks, which again are at my wrist, were formed all the way at sea level. That is 0 feet. Right now we're at about 8,000 feet into the air, and so that is a truly significant amount of distance that these rocks have traveled from where they were deposited until where they are right now. So as this happens, the land begins to buckle upwards and upwards, but as well as that, we have long vertical cracks which are breaking into these dead critter rocks. Long, long vertical cracks. And these cracks are important because they pave the way for the third and final parts of the story of forming Bryce Canyon, which involves the power of ice and rainwater to form and sculpt the hoodoos. So do you guys all know what hoodoos are? These guys, these really strange pillars that seem to be growing out of the ground, right? Except they don't grow out of the ground like a tree would. A more appropriate way to think about it would be chiseling it out of a big block of land, such as the one that I just described due to this plate tectonic interaction, the one with the big cracks in it. So for this next part, we're going to form hoodoos right here. Who wants to be a hoodoo? Brave hoodoo over here. Come on, it's not hard. You're going to need 2 more people.
Go, Roxy.
No one wants to be a hoodoo?
Come on, Roxy.
I'll be a
Roxy
hoodoo.
and Grandma.
Okay, Rock. Okay. All right. So I'm going to need you guys to stand shoulder to shoulder. All right. Yes, perfect. And so this is the cliff formed of the dead critter rocks. What are the alternating layers again?
Sandstone.
Perfect. So our limestone and dolostone cliff, and they have been uplifted thousands of feet, and we have long vertical cracks forming through them. We'll say it's the space in between their shoulders. So now here at Bryce Canyon, we have a really unique setting where we have both above freezing and below freezing temperatures, one after the other, one after the other. So what happens is, during our cold temperatures, we get the formation of snow, which we will have fall on top of this cliff, which we have just created. But again, it's not just cold temperatures. We have the repetition of cold and warm temperatures back to back. So when it gets warm again, what's going to happen to the snow which is formed on top of their head? Yes, you do.
It melts
Yes, you
and
do.
forms water.
It melts and forms water, exactly. And so where's this water going to preferentially trickle down?
Their shoulders.
In between the cracks, exactly. But once again, this is a repetition of cold and warm temperatures. So this water, now trapped in between these cracks, freezes when it gets cold. And does water get smaller or bigger when it freezes?
Bigger.
It gets bigger. And so it expands and begins to rip and break apart the rocks. We call this freeze thaw, the ripping apart of rocks by ice. And so this might seem minuscule, but if you repeat this a lot of times, this happens 200 nights out of the year. More than half the days of the year, we have freeze thaw. So slowly, it begins to rip and break apart. Let's fast forward through time, and let's split apart, guys. And so, that's fine. So we have the hoodoos broken apart, but we have to sculpt them now. If you guys look at these hoodoos, how would you describe them? Are they fairly straight? No. They're kind of lumpy, right? They have layers that go in and layers which go out.
Like
in,
people.
out. Like, which is why I use you guys up here. And so let's take a moment. Let's make ourselves real chunky hoodoos. Let's get real wide. We have wide hoodoos over here.
I'm the
Alright,
white
And
student.
so what we have here, we'll say these big wide layers will be the limestone layers. Now, especially in the summer months, we get a lot of rain which falls down on these hoodoos. As rainwater continuously downpours on these rocks, if you recall from the first part of the story, one of these rocks is going to dissolve more easily than the other one. Which one was that? So limestone. So as the rainwater falls on us, we get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier until we form our shape. And what we have now are layers which stick out more, such as our heads and our shoulders. These will be the dolostone layers, the ones which don't dissolve as easily. We have the skinnier layers, such as our necks and the rest of our bodies, which are the limestone layers. But as you will see, these hoodoos, sometimes they have big, fat parts being carried by these skinny little parts, and so their fate is really what you see before you, all these crumbled hills over here. It's pretty much a hoodoo graveyard. And so as these rocks can no longer hold themselves up, they will eventually collapse. Let's break apart, guys.
Wait, before you break.
No, we're gonna break apart. Break apart, guys. All right. And so that is the fate. Name the two hoodoos. We have we have the Grandma Sandy hoodoo and the Sister Roxy hoodoo.
Yay!
Let's give a round of applause for the hoodoos up here.
Yay!
And this brave hoodoo
And the
over
very
here.
smart
Thank you very
kid
much, guys.
hoodoo.
And so as you guys walk away from this talk, yeah, hoodoos, you can sit down now. As you guys walk away from this talk, I really encourage you, as you continue to look at the landscapes, to try to envision the past stories which are captured within them, which once again are a giant lake filled with dead critters to create the colorful rocks. We have the interaction of huge pieces of earth which crash into one another, cause the land to uplift and crack, break apart. And finally, we have the power of ice and rainwater to form and sculpt the hoodoos. Remember, these are just the stories which are told here at Bryce Canyon. Whenever you go to any national park, I encourage you to look at their landscapes, try to learn about the stories captured within as well. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Yay!